Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. Chapter 8. The author relates several particulars of the Yahoos, the great virtues of Nimnims, the education and exercise of their youth, their general assembly. As I ought to have understood human nature much better than I supposed possible for my master to do, so it was easy to apply the character he gave of the Yahoos to myself and my countrymen. And I believed I could yet make farther discoveries of my own observation. I therefore often begged his favour to let me go amongst a herd of Yahoos in the neighbourhood, to which he was always very graciously consented, being perfectly convinced that I hatred bore those brutes, would never suffer me to be corrupted by them, that his honour ordered one of his servants, a strong soul nag, very honest and good-natured, to be my guard, without whose protection I durst not undertake such adventures, for I had already told the reader how much I was pestered by those odious animals upon my first arrival, and I afterwards failed very narrowly 3 or 4 times, falling into their clutches, where I happened to stray any distance without my hanger, and I have reason to believe they have some imagination that I was their own species, and I often assisted myself by stripping up my sleeves, showing my naked arms and breast in their sight, which my protector was with me, and at these times they would approach me as near as they durst, and imitate my actions, after the manner of monkeys, but with ever signs of hatred, as a tame jackdaw. The cap, in stockings, is always persecuted by the wild ones, when he happened to be got among them. They are prodigiously nimble for their infancy, however. I caught a young male of 3 years old, and endeavoured by all marks of tenderness to make it quiet. But the little imp fell a squalling and scratching and biting with such violence that I was forced to let go, and it was high time, for the whole troop of old ones came about us at the noise, but finding the cub was safe, for it ran away, and my sorrel nag being by, that they durst not venture near us. I observed the young animal's flesh to smell very rank, and the stink was somewhat between a weasel or a fox, but much more disagreeable. I forgot another circumstance, and perhaps I might have the reader's pardon if it was wholly omitted, that I held the odious vermin in my hand, and voided its filthy excrement of a yellow liquid substance all over my clothes. But by good fortune there was a small brook hard by, where I washed myself as clean as I could, although I durst not come into my master's presence, until I was sufficiently aired. By what I could discover, the Yahoos appeared to be the most unteachable of all animals, their capacity never reaching higher than to draw or carry their burthens. Yet I am of opinion of this defect ariseth chiefly from a persive, perverse, restive disposition, for they are cunning, malicious, treacherous, and revengeful. They are strong and hardy, but of a cowardly spirit, and consequent insolent and cruel. It is observed that the red hair of both sexes is libidinous and mischievous than the rest, whom they much exceed in strength and activity. The Houyhnhnms and the Yahoos to present use of huts not far from the house, but they are rest of sent abroad to the certain fields, where they dig up roots, eat several kinds of herbs, search for carrion, and sometimes catch weasel or luminov, a sort of wild rat, which they greedily devour. Nature has taught them how to dig deep holes with their nails on the side of the rising ground, which they lie by themselves. Only the kennels of the female are larger sufficient to hold 2 or 3 cubs. They swim with their infancy like frogs, and are able to continue long under water, where they often take fish, which the females carry home to the young. And upon this occasion, I hope the reader will pardon my relating an odd adventure. Being one day abroad with my protector, the sorrel nag, the weather exceedingly hot, I entreated him to let me bathe in a river that was near. He consented, and I immediately stripped myself stark naked, and went softly down into the stream. It happened that a young female Yahoo, standing behind a bank, then saw the whole proceeding, and inflamed by desire, as the nag and I conjectured, came running all with speed. I leaped into the water 5 yards of the place where I bathed. I was never in my life so terribly frightened, that the nag was grazing at some distance, not suspecting any harm. She embraced me in the most fulsome manner. I roared as loud as I could, and the nag came galloping towards me, whereupon she quitted the grass with utmost reluctancy, and leaped upon the opposite side of the bank, where she stood gazing and howling all the time I was putting on my clothes. This was the matter of diversion to my master and his family, as well as my mortification to myself. For now I can no longer deny that I was a real Yahoo in every limb and feature, since the females had not a natural propensity to me as one of their own species. Neither was the hair of this brute of a red color, which might have been some excuse for the appetite a little irregular, but the black as a sloe, and her countenance make not an appearance altogether so hideous as the rest of the kind, for I think she could not be above 11 years old. Having lived 3 years in this country, the reader I will suspect that I should, like other travellers, give some account of the manners and customs of the inhabitants, which it was indeed my principal study to learn. As these noble Houyhnhnms are endowed by nature with a general disposition to all virtues, and have no conception of what is evil in a rational creature, so was their grand maxim, to cultivate reason, and to be wholly governed by it. Neither is reason among them a point problematical with us, and where men can argue with plausibility on both sides of a question, but strikes you with the immediate conviction that it must need to do where it is not mingled, obscured, or discoloured by passion and interest. I remember it was with extreme difficulty that I could bring my master to understand the meaning of the word opinion, and how a point could be disputable, because reason taught us to affirm or deny either, so that controversies, wranglings, disputes, positiveness in false or dubious propositions are evil unknown among Houyhnhnms. In the like manner, when I used to explain to him our several systems of natural philosophy, he would laugh at the creature's pretending to reason, and should value itself upon the knowledge of other people's conjectures, and in things, which that knowledge, if it were certain, could be of no use, where he agreed entirely with the sentiments of Socrates, as Plato delivers them, which I mentioned at the highest honour I can do that the prince of philosophers. I had often since reflected what destruction such a doctrine could make in the libraries of Europe, and how many paths to fame would then be shut up in the learned world. Friendship and benevolence are two principal virtues among Houyhnhnms, and these are not confined to particular objects, but universal to the whole race, for a stranger from the remotest part is equally treated with the nearest neighbour, and whenever he goes and looks upon himself at home, they preserve decency and civility in the highest degree, but are altogether ignorant of ceremony. They have no fondness of their colts or foals, but the care they take in educating them proceeds entirely to the dictates of reason. I observed my master to shew the same affection to his neighbour's issue for he had of his own. They will have it that nature teaches them to love the whole species, and it is reason only maketh a distinct of persons, where it is a superior degree of virtue. When the matron Houyhnhnms have produced one of each sex, they no longer accompany with the consorts; they happen to lose one to their issues of some casualty, which very seldom happens, but in such a case they will meet again, which or the same accident befalls on the person, whose wife is past bearing, some other couple bestow him on one of their coats, and they will go together again until the mother is pregnant. The caution is necessary to prevent the country from being overburthened with numbers. The race is so inferior who Nimnims bred up to be the servants, not so strictly limited upon this article. They are allowed to produce three of each sex to be domestic in the noble families. In their marriages they are exactly careful to choose such colours as they will not make any disagreeable mixture in the breed. Strength is chiefly valued in the male, comeliness in the female, not upon the count of love, but to preserve the race from degenerating, for which the female happens to excel in strength, and the consort is chosen with regard of comeliness, courtship, love, presents, joyness, joynisters, settlements have no place in their thoughts, or terms whereby to express them in their language. The young couple are meet and joined, and it is they see it done every day. They look upon it as one of the necessary actions of rational beings. But the violation of marriage, as any other unchastity, never heard of, and the married pair pass their lives with the same friendship and mutual benevolence that they will bear to all others of the same species who come in their way, without jealousy, fondness, quarrelling, or discontent. In educating youth of both sexes, their method is admirable, and highly deserves our imitation. These are not suffered to taste a grain of oats, except upon certain days, 18 years old, nor milk, but rarely, and in the summer they graze 2 hours in the morning, and there is as long in the evening, which their parents likewise observe, but the servants not allow above half that time, and a great part of their grass is brought home, which they eat at the most convenient hours, when they can be spared from work. Temperance, industry, exercise, and cleanliness are the lessons equally enjoyed to young ones of both sexes, and that my master thought it was monstrous in us to give some females a different kind of education than from the males, except in some articles of domestic management, whereby he truly observed, as one half of our natives were good for nothing but bringing children into the world, and trust the care of our children to such useless animals. He said he was yet a greater instance of brutality, but the Houyhnhnms trained up their youth to strength, speed, and hardiness, and exercising them in running races up and down steep hills, over hard stony grounds, and when they are all in sweat, order them to leap over head and ear into a pond or a river. 4 times a year the youth of certain districts meet to shew their proficiency in running, in leaping, and other feats of strength and agility, where the victor is rewarded, and a song is made in his or her praise. On this festival, the servants drive a herd of Yahoos into the field, laden with hay and oats and milk, for a repast of the Houyhnhnms, after which these brutes immediately are driven back again, for the fear of being noisome to the assembly. Every 4 years, at the vernal equinox, there is a representative council of the whole nation, which meets in a plain about 20 miles from our house, continues about 5 or 6 days. They will inquire into the state of condition of their several districts, whether they abound or are deficiency in hay or oats, or cows or yahoos, and whenever there is any want, which is but seldom, is immediately supplied by unanimous consent and contribution. Here, likewise, the regulation of children is settled, as for instance, if a Houyhnhnm hath 2 males, he changeth one of them with another that hath 2 females. When a child has been lost by any casualty, whether the mother is past breeding, it is determined what the family in district shall breed another to supply the loss.